Hello everyone. Today I am here to explain about the module RTOS, that is Real-Time Operating System for Embedded System Design. So these are the topics that will be covered in this module. So we'll be starting with operating system basics. Then we have types of operating systems. Then we have the concepts of task, process and threads. Then we have multiprocessing and multitasking. Then we have task scheduling, where we will be looking into different scheduling algorithms that are followed by operating system. And finally we have how to choose an RTOS, that is what are the different parameters that we need to consider while selecting an operating system for a real-time application. So let us start with first topic, that is operating system basics. So here we will be seeing the definition of operating system. So operating system acts as a bridge between user applications or tasks and the underlying system resources through a set of system functionalities and services. So operating system is going to act as a bridge between user application and the system resources. So user application is nothing but the application or a program which we are going to run or execute in a system. And what is the system resources? So system resources includes the processor. So if you consider your system, it is having certain resources. So what are those means? So the major thing is CPU, the processor where the processing takes place. And also if you consider your system or if you consider your phone, so it is having a memory. So memory is also one of the system resource. And also the different input-output devices that are connected to your PC or to your system or to your phone are nothing but system resources. Okay, so it is operating system is going to act as a bridge between these system resources and the application which we are going to run on the system, and it is carried out with the help of a set of software services. Okay, that's why the definition of operating system says that operating system acts as a bridge between user applications or tasks and the underlying system resources through a set of system functionalities and services. Okay. The second point says that OS manages the system resources and makes them available to the user application or task on a need basis. So operating system should know what are the system resources that are available in a particular system. So that is, it should have a list of input-output devices that are connected to a system. It should know what is the total memory that is present in the system, how much of that memory is already in use, how much of system is free to use. All those things should be known by the operating system, and it should provide all these things to an application when it is being executed. Okay, so with this we can say that the primary functions of an operating system are: first is make the system convenient to use. So it should make the system convenient for an application to run. That is by allocating this and deallocating the system resource. So whatever the system resources that are demanded or requested by the application should be provided by the operating system, and it should make convenient for that application to execute and generate the necessary result. And second function is organize and manage the system resources efficiently and correctly. So there may be a scenario wherein more than one application will be running. So the operating system should take care that these system resources are correctly and allocated for multiplications to execute. Okay, so the primary functions of operating systems are what? Make the system convenient to use and organize and manage the system resources efficiently and correctly. Okay, so this is the definition of operating system and basic or primary functions of operating system. So next we have the kernel. So the kernel is the core of operating system. So we can also say that kernel is the heart of an operating system. So actually it is responsible for managing the system resources and also to carry out the communication between the hardware that are present in a system and the software that will be run or that will be executed on the system. Okay, and also it acts as an abstraction layer between system resources and user applications. So what is abstraction layer means? Suppose if you are executing an application, actually we are interested only with the output. So once we execute the application, we'll get the output and it will be okay. But we are not considered, or we are not interested, or we are not going to worry about what are the processes that are taken behind to generate that necessary output, or what are the different system resources that are used by the application to generate that output. So all these things will be taken care by operating system. That is in case it is done by kernel. Okay, so kernel acts as the abstraction layer between the system resources and user application. And also kernel contains a set of system libraries and services. So these are ready system libraries and services. If your application is compatible with already present system libraries and services, you can use these system libraries and services. Suppose if your application demands some special services which are not present in the operating system, then we need to design a customized operating system for that particular application to run. Okay. So now let us consider the architecture of operating system. So if you see here, there are three main parts. So first is user application, that is the application that we want to execute or run, or the software we want to execute or be run. Then we are having intermediate kernel services. So that is the kernel or operating system. And finally we are having underlying hardware, that is the system resources that are present in the system. Okay. So now we shall see what different kernel services that are provided by an operating system. Okay. So first service that we are going to look into is memory management. So memory means there could be two things. One is primary memory, or one more is secondary memory. So here we will be looking into primary memory management first. So here primary memory refers to the RAM. RAM means random access memory. So we know that RAM is volatile memory. So what it is constitute of? So why you require RAM means in order to store the processes, or there may be number of processes that should be loaded into the memory. So all the processes will be loaded into primary memory, and also it contains different variables and data that are shared by different processes. Okay, so this is carried out with the help of memory management unit, MMU. So memory management unit is responsible for keeping track of which part of memory area is currently used by which process. So MMU should know what part of the memory is being currently used by currently executing process, and also allocating and deallocating a memory phase for the processes. So what is the requirement, or what is the memory requirement of a process should be known by MMU, and it should allocate that memory space to a process to execute successfully. So here we will be coming across dynamic memory allocation. So one more is static memory allocation. So in case of static memory allocation, what we do is that we are going to allocate a fixed amount of memory before the execution of process. Okay, so usually what we do is that we are going to allocate some quantity of memory more than what is required. Okay, but that is not the case in case of dynamic memory allocation. So in case of dynamic memory allocation, what we do is that the process will be executed. So during the execution, what is the current requirement of that process? Taking that into consideration, memory will be allocated for a process. So process gets executed, and after execution, when the process releases the memory, that memory is going to be sent to something called as heap memory. So when next another process is scheduled to execute, so memory will be allocated from this heap memory to that process. Okay, so this forms the first kernel service, that is memory management. So next we are having process management. So what is process management means? It is going to deal with managing the processes or tasks. So what do you mean by managing the process? So it includes setting up the memory space for process, that is allocation of memory space for a particular process, then loading the process code into the memory space. So process code is nothing but the part of the program. So process is actually nothing but a part of a program. So your program, what you are going to execute, okay, that can be divided into number of small parts, and each part of that program will be called as process. Okay, or your entire program can be of single process. So then it is called a single process program. Okay, so here What is that? First thing is allocating the memory space for process. The next thing is loading the process code. So the code which is corresponding to that particular process should be loaded into memory space for execution. That is also done by process management service. Next is allocation of system resources. So once the code is loaded into the memory, so it will come to know what is the required resources for executing that process successfully. So it could be any type of memory, it could be internal memory or external memory, or it could be IO devices. So all these things will be understood by the process management service, and that system resources will be allocated for that process to execute. And next is scheduling and managing execution of process. So scheduling of process is nothing but, suppose there are multiple processes. So which process should be scheduled or which process should be executed now, and for what amount of time it should be executed. That is called scheduling. So scheduling and execution management of the process will be done by process management service. And next is what? Setting up of process control block, PCB. PCB here corresponds to process control block. So process control block will hold all the information which is related to a particular process. When a process is generated, so it is going to set up PCB of its own. So every process will be having a process control block or individual process control block of its own. So what will be the information in that means it is going to give all the information related to that particular process. So what is the process ID? So process ID will be required for identifying the process. So that will be there in case of your PCB, and also it is having status registers. So in order to know what is the current status of process, that can be known through the status registers which are present in process control block. Okay, so setting up of all this process control block is done by process management service. And then communication and synchronization between the processes. Okay, so if there is a shared data that needs to be used by if there is a shared data which needs to be used by two or more number of processes, so then communication between them is required, and synchronization when a particular process should start. All those things are controlled by process management services. And also once the process completes its execution, we need to delete it. Okay, if it is not required, delete it from the memory so that you can load another process code into that memory. Okay, so all these things will be done by process management. Okay, so what we can say is that process management involves what? Allocation of memory for a particular process, allocation of required system resources for a particular process, loading of process code into the memory, and then scheduling of processes, and then setting up of PCB, that is process control block, and finally communication between the processes and synchronization between the processes, and then deletion of processes. So next kernel service that we will be looking into is time management. So here time management service deals with at what time which process needs to be scheduled. Okay, and till what duration that particular process needs to be executed, and also after what time a process needs to be preempted. So all these things will be taken care by time management service. So there is something called as time-based scheduling. So in case of time-based scheduling, what happens is that a particular process will be scheduled at a particular time, and it will be scheduled only for that fixed time duration. Okay, so example is round robin scheduling. So we will be coming across round robin scheduling in task scheduling concept. So here what we have to understand is that when a process should be scheduled, for what amount of time it should be scheduled. All these things will be taken care by time management kernel service. So next kernel service is file system management. You know what is a file? A file is nothing but what? A collection of information. And we can also say that it is a set of information or a collection of information or data. So this data can be of any form. So it could be a simple code. So it could be a program code, or it could be a text data. So it is called text file. Then it could be an image. So in that case it is an image file, or it could be a Word document, or the data can be of audio or video type, and so on. So what this file management does is that it is capable of, or it is having certain responsibilities. So first thing is what? Creation of file. So if you want to create new file, so it is done by file system management. Deletion of files. Suppose there are unnecessary files which are present, then which should be deleted. So again, that is done by file system management service. Or alteration of files. Suppose data in certain files had to be changed or altered. That is also carried out with the help of file system management service. And in the similar line, we are having creation, deletion and alteration of directories. So what is directories? They are nothing but collection of files. Okay. So in order to create directories, or if you want to delete a directory, or any alteration should be done to the directory, it is done with the help of file system management. Okay. Then we are having saving of files. So if you want to save this file, it will be saved in secondary storage. Okay. So as I told, there are two types of memory. One is primary memory, another is secondary memory. So primary memory will be usually used to store the code or a program code what we want to execute, and all the necessary data for execution of this code will be stored in secondary memory. Okay. So saving of files or intermediate results also, all these things will be stored in secondary memory. So saving of files in secondary memory is carried out with the help of file system management. And if you want to save the files, a particular amount of space must be allocated for a particular file. So that is also done through file system management service. Okay. And next, at last, you are having providing a flexible naming convention for the files. So you would have come across file extensions. When you want to save some files in your PC or in your phone, you would have come across dot something. So what is this file extension? So it is the convention followed by the operating system actually. So in order to understand what type of data is present in that file. For example, if you type JPEG, JPEG, it is nothing but an image file, correct? Or DOC, doc. So it is a document. So like that, we can know what type of data is stored in the file with the help of file extension. So these file extensions are actually OS dependent. Okay. For example, if you consider assembly files, again you can store it as .s or .asm. So some operating systems can know what is .s. Some operating system will be knowing what is .asm. Okay. So again it is operating system dependent. Okay. So what are the functions of a file system management? Means creation, deletion and alteration of files. Similarly, creation, deletion and alteration of directories, and then saving of files, then allocating of memory for saving of that files in secondary memory, and then we are having what? Providing flexible naming conventions. So these forms the responsibilities of file system management services. And one more thing that you need to take care or note is that, so all these file system management services what we have discussed here, it is not fixed for all the operating system. So it is actually operating system dependent. So particular operating system or some operating system may support all the file management services what we have come across, or it may support only some of the file system management services. So file system management services varies from operating system to operating system. Okay. So next we are having IO system management, that is input output system management. Okay. So here it says that kernel is responsible for routing the IO request coming from different user applications to the appropriate IO devices of the system. So what it means, suppose if you want to execute an application, so it requires input device, so it could be keyboard. So what it does, that application, when you want to try to execute it, so it is going to raise an request, so that it requires keyboard for execution. So that request which is raised by that application should be routed to keyboard only. Okay. So who is going to do that? That is done by the kernel. So that is nothing but operating system. Correct. So first and foremost function of IO system management is routing of requests related to input output devices to appropriate input output devices only. Okay. And one more thing is that if you consider any well structured operating system, okay, there is no direct access of IO devices. So all the accesses to IO devices will be made through something called as API, Application Programming Interface. So what is this application programming interface means? This is going to define how to communicate with the input output devices. Okay, so how an operating system can communicate with input output devices is defined by who? Application programming interfaces. Also, as I told, if any application requires IO devices, it is going to generate IO calls or IO requests. So how to generate this input output requests or input output calls is defined by application programming interface. And also the different data formats that are supported by different input output devices is defined by application program interface. And also the different conventions that are followed by input output devices that are connected to the system are defined by application program interface. Okay, so what is an API? API is an interface between the IO device and the system, or IO devices and the operating system, which is going to define how an IO call or IO request will be made, and which is going to define which are the data formats that are supported by input output device, and also which is going to define the different conventions that are followed by input output devices. All these things will be defined by API, application programming interface. Okay, the operating system should know what are the different input output devices that are connected to a system. Okay, so that is done through what? Kernel maintains a list of IO devices. So kernel will be having a list of input output devices. Suppose if you connect any new input output devices, then this list gets automatically updated. Okay, so in order to maintain this IO related operations, kernel services or kernel IO system management services make use of device manager. So even in case of your PCs, you would have come across device manager. So when you look into that device manager, you will be able to see what are the different ports that are available in your system or PC, and what are different devices that are connected to each of that port will be shown. So IO system management service make use of device manager to perform IO related operations. Correct? Then we are having something called as device drivers. Okay, so what are these device drivers? Device drivers are the ones which are going to make the devices compatible with the system to which they are connected. For example, if you consider your USB or pen drives, when you plug in your pen drives or USB for the first time to your system, so you can see device drivers are being installed. Or sometimes if you connect your printers to your system, again you can see that device drivers are being installed. So what are these device drivers means? They are nothing but a set of rules or set of instructions that make these devices compatible with the system. Okay, so now if you look into the responsibilities of a device manager, the first is loading and unloading of device drivers, and also exchanging of information from the system specific controls to and from the devices. So exchange of information between your IO devices and the system or OS is carried out with the help of device manager. Okay, so this would be the final architecture of operating system. So we can see that there are three layers. One is application, that is user application. Next is intermediate layer, that is kernel services or OS. Then we are having underlying hardware or system resources. So the user application is going to communicate with OS through API, that is application programming interface, and the system hardwares will be communicating with the OS through device driver. Okay, so the next we are having secondary storage management. So the services what we have discussed till now are basic operating system services. So along with that there are some more services like secondary storage management. So what we saw was primary memory management. So we are having secondary storage management. So what is this secondary storage management means? So it is usually the secondary storage devices like your hard disks. So what it is means, it is mainly used for backup purpose. Okay, so if you consider your primary memory, so primary memory will be usually what? RAM. So RAM is volatile memory. So we need to take a backup of those things and save it in non-volatile memory. So secondary storage memories or secondary storage devices or non-volatile memory. Okay, so the code or data in the primary memory will be backed up and stored in secondary storage memory. So secondary storage management services are responsible for disk storage allocation. So what is disk storage allocation means? So allocation of space in the secondary storage memory for saving the data that is backed up from primary memory. Okay, then we are having disk scheduling. So disk scheduling is nothing but when we should back up the data from the primary memory, when we should switch the secondary memory devices, or when we should configure the secondary memory devices to back up the data. That is disk scheduling. Then we are having free disk space management. So free disk space management means freeing up the space in secondary storage. Suppose there is some unwanted data or there is some duplicate copies of the already available data. In that case, we need to delete that so that we make space for new data to be stored into the secondary storage memory. Okay. In some cases, at regular intervals, the backed up data will be erased so that it makes space for new data to be stored. Because secondary storage devices are again have limited capacity. Okay, you cannot store data unlimitedly. So when we are backing up new data into this, so if the old data is not necessary, that should be erased. That is taken care by free disk space management. Okay, and next we are having protection system. So that is one more kernel service that is provided by the OS. So if you consider advanced or modern operating system, they are going to support multiple users with multiple level of access permissions. Okay, so what it means not all the users which are using the operating system will be allowed to access all the data. Okay, there are cases wherein one user application may not be able to alter the complete data of the data which is related to another user. Okay, so that protection of data from unauthorized access is provided by protection system services. And also there may be cases that all the applications may not be able to access all the system resources that are available. Okay, so some of the system resources will be allocated only for certain types of applications. That is also there. So this protection system deals with these things. Okay. So one more kernel service is interrupt handler. So when even in case of IO calls or IO request, what I discussed earlier, so there should be interrupt that raises. So interrupt, whenever an interrupt occurs, the system or the OS should know what type of interrupt that has occurred. Either it is internal interrupt or external interrupt, or whether it is a hardware interrupt or a software interrupt, or whether it is asking for system services or it is user services. All those things should be known by the operating system and it should take necessary steps to serve those interrupt. So all those things will be taken care by interrupt handler service. Okay. So these are some of the services that are offered by OS kernel. Okay. So one more thing that you need to keep in mind is that all these services what we have discussed till now are some of the basic services. So the kernel services are usually OS dependent. It depends upon the operating system or kind of operating system, where it is going to be deployed. On all this basis, the kernel services varies from operating system to operating system. Along with these basic services provided by operating system, there may be additional or add-on services like networking. So networking service allows communication between one system with the another system as well. Or there could be other services like user interface graphics or timer services or error handler services or data management services and so on. Okay. So next we are having kernel space or user space. Kernel space versus user space. So any application that we run on an operating system can be categorized into two types. Either it will be an kernel application or it will be an user application. So kernel application will be related to operating system and user application will be the code what we run over the operating system. Okay. So the program code which is corresponding to a kernel application will be kept in a contiguous area of primary memory. That is continuous area of primary memory, and it is protected from unauthorized access by the user programs, so that it is not corrupted by user programs. Okay, so the data or the code which is related to kernel application will be stored in continuous primary memory area, and it will be made unaccessible by the user programs. So in order to avoid corruption, and that space, memory space where this code corresponding to kernel application is stored is called as kernel space. Okay, and in the similar line, all the programs or codes which are related to user applications will be stored in a particular area of primary memory, and that memory area will be called as user space. Okay, and also what you should note here is that the partition of kernel space and user space is again OS dependent. So different operating systems will partition kernel space and user space in different manner. Okay, and one more thing is, if the operating system what we have considered supports virtual memory, okay, in that case what happens is that the user applications will be loaded into corresponding virtual memory space with demand paging technique. Okay, so the user code or the code related to any user applications will be loaded into primary memory through a process called demand paging technique. So what is this means? So here the entire code related to user application will not be loaded into primary memory at once. Instead, what it does is, so the user code will be divided into number of fixed sized memory blocks, and it will be available in the form of queue. Okay, so these blocks will be loaded into the primary memory on demand basis. So if it is any particular block of code is required, only that block of code will be loaded into primary memory during the execution of that application. Okay, so this process of loading user code in and out of the primary memory is called as swapping. Okay, so swapping usually takes place between the primary memory and the secondary memory. Yes, so the user code which was stored in secondary memory will be swapped into primary memory when it is required, and after execution it will be swapped back to secondary memory. Okay, so this we can't see with respect to kernel applications. So swapping can be seen only with respect to user applications. So the code which is related to kernel application will be loaded into primary memory at once. Okay, only the code which is related to user application will be swapped from primary memory to secondary memory and secondary memory to primary memory with the help of or through demand paging technique. Okay, that we need to understand. Yes, so that is related to kernel space and user space. And next concept what we have to look into is monolithic kernel and microkernel. First we shall see the features of monolithic kernel. So it says that in the monolithic kernel architecture, so this is the architecture of monolithic kernel. Okay, so what we can see here is that in monolithic kernel architecture, all kernel services run in the kernel space only. So all the services what we have discussed till now, or any add-on services related to kernel, will be running in the kernel space only. Okay, so all the kernel modules will run in the same memory space and in a single kernel thread. Okay, so all the kernel modules. So these applications what we have come across, kernel applications or kernel services, can be divided into number of kernel modules, and all these modules will run in the same memory space and under same kernel thread. Okay, and what is the advantage of this architecture or model is that due to tight internal integration of kernel modules, so it will be able to utilize even low level features of underlying system. Okay, so that is the advantage of monolithic kernel. Okay, because of tight integration or tight internal integration of kernel modules. Okay, so even low level features of underlying systems. So even the simple to simple feature or basic features of all the hardware or system resources can be exploited or utilized by the OS because of this tight internal integration. But the drawback of this monolithic kernel is that if there is an error or a failure in any one of the kernel module, what happens? It is going to crash the entire kernel application. Okay, so even if there is any error or failure in case of any one of the kernel module, the entire kernel application itself will crashes. So that is the drawback of monolithic kernel. Okay, so if you see or if you want to go through the applications or examples of monolithic kernel based operating system, it is Linux, MS-DOS and Solaris. So these are some of the examples of monolithic kernel based operating systems. Okay, so next we shall see the features of microkernel. Okay, so if you look into the architecture of microkernel, we can see that only the essential services, kernel services like memory management or process management or timer system management will run in kernel space, and all the additional services will run through programs called servers, and this will run in user space. Okay, so examples for microkernel based operating system are Mac MSEH, and then you are having QNX, Minix 3 and so on. Okay, microkernel based operating system is going to offer two major benefits. The first thing is robustness and the next is configurability. So what is robustness means? Server programs can be reconfigured and restarted any number of times. So if you want to make any changes in case of your server programs, you can make those changes and you can restart or rerun that server program any number of times. And one more thing is that server programs shall be running in user space, whereas all the other essential services will run in kernel space. So the chances of getting corrupted, so these essential services getting corrupted due to failure in server program is ideally zero. So there is no chance of corruption of kernel services due to errors or failures in server programs, correct? And next is configurability. So configurability means server applications can be changed without restarting the entire system. Suppose if you want to make any change in server program, you can make these changes in that server program and you can start the or restart that server program without restarting the entire application. Okay, so what it means is that dynamically configurable. So this property we can call it as dynamically configurable. Okay, so any change with respect to server program can be made when the application is being executed only. There is no need for you to halt the application, make the changes and rerun it. Instead, you can make the changes and rerun it when the application is being executed only. So this property is called as dynamically configurable. Okay, so that will be the end of first topic corresponding to this module, that is operating system basics. So what are the things that we have come across now is that we have seen the definition of operating system, and then we saw the definition of kernel, and we have come across architecture of OS kernel, wherein we have come across the basic kernel services that are provided by the OS. Then we saw what is that kernel space and user space. Then we have seen the difference between the monolithic kernel and microkernel based operating system, correct? So let me stop here for this video. We shall see the remaining topics related to this module in the next video. So till then, take care and goodbye.